Hey everybody, my name is Tobias and I'm going to show you how I do my insect skater guy here. This is the final image, and as you can see, he doesn't include a lot of color. Mostly he consists of black, which makes him super easy to draw. I'm showing you the result so that you know what I'll be working towards in this video. But what I started with was a relatively simple ball pen on paper sketch. I created all the lines and shapes, so basically it's just the outlines, but in my head I already know which parts I want to color and how I plan to do this. So in Photoshop I open my scanned image, and by default this scribble has become the background layer. I now create a new layer on top and name it Outlines, because those are what I'm going to retrace first. For that I zoom into my image to get a better view, and I pick my ink brush 4. The 4 stands for the diameter, which I'm going to adjust now so that it corresponds to the thickness of the lines in my scan, so 17 in this case. Other than that, the brush has a simple round shape with 100% set for the opacity, hardness and the flow. The only thing notable is that under the brush settings I've set the size jitter to the pen pressure. That allows me to create tapering lines, hence the name ink brush. And as you can see, all I'm doing right now is to simply retrace the outer contours of my character. I pay close attention that all the parts that I'm creating are closed, because that'll be very important for the following steps. But besides that, redrawing the whole thing is the only thing that I'm doing right now. Okay, let's zoom out and have a look. And you can see that there is an empty space between the legs and the board, so I'll have to retrace that one as well, of course. Once that is done, I choose a new foreground color. What I want is some kind of pale brownish tone. And what I often do when picking a color is to activate the option to only show me colors for web, because that already shows me these squares with different tones to choose from. So I can pick one, deactivate the option again, and then drag my selection around until I find my desired tone, like this one here. I create another new layer on top of the first one, and this time I name it brown, because what I'm going to do here is to set a different layer for every different color. Again, I zoom in, and this time I'm not only retracing the shapes that I want to become brown, no, I already filled them out completely. And thereby you can also see how the tapering effect that I talked about comes in quite handy. Again, I already know which ones of my shapes I want to be brown, so I'll just working my way through them. Here at the, well, chest I guess, you can see that I overlap a little bit with some other shapes that you can see. But that's okay, because later on those ones will be filled on another layer which will be above this one, so they will be visible again. You may also notice that I don't just follow all the lines of my original scribble, because sometimes I see stuff that could be slightly better, so I just correct that whenever I see fit. Okay, also done. New layer. This one I call dark green, which is for the pens. Again, I use the same trick to pick my color and retrace the outlines of the area which will contain the pens. When I got that, I use the magic wand, select the inner space of the shape that I've just created. And that is the reason why I mentioned before that it's very important to close all of your parts. Now if I zoom in, you can see that the selection lies only within the outlines. If I would fill that now directly, what can sometimes happen is that it creates tiny little gapes between my drawn outlines and the selected area. So what I do is I go over the menu, Selection, Modify, Expand, and there I enter a value, in this case of 2 pixels, and you can see how my selection has grown now, those 2 pixels, and it covers part of the outlines as well, so there is no risk for any gape. I use the menu again and select Edit and Fill. I set the foreground color, which is still this green tone, and OK. And there is the pen. Now comes another layer, and I activate the option for clipping mask. The name of this one is also pretty self-explanatory, light green. This time I can just use the slider to find my tone. Okay, let's zoom in to look at the pens again. You notice some shapes I haven't drawn yet. Those will become my light green areas, and it's going to give some effect to the pens, like some kind of highlights. I must now deactivate the clipping mask again, because otherwise you wouldn't see what I'm doing. I cover those areas with my light green, and yes, I am very generous in the way I retrace those shapes. But that's okay, because those shapes will be included in the shape of my dark green area underneath. Okay, once I'm done, I activate the dark green layer again. I hold the Alt Graph key on my keyboard and move the cursor in between those 2 layers. Can you see how it shows me those 2 overlapping circles now? This means that the upper layer will become a clipping mask for the layer below, meaning all of its content will only be visible within the space that is occupied by the layer below. In clear words, everything I do in my light green layer will only be visible on top of the area that is filled with dark green on the layer below, which means all the times I overcross those shapes, that will be invisible. Okay, I create another layer on top for the eye. It has the same light green as the highlights of the pens, but since that shape of course is not included in the dark green area, it needs a separate layer. Again, I retrace the outlines, use the magic wand, expand the selection and fill it. Now I set white as my foreground color, and I create another layer on top for that color as well. You saw that I lowered the opacity of the layer containing the eye to 60%, so that the shapes of my original scribble are visible again. So now I can see the shapes within the eye again, which I'm going to fill on my new white layer. Okay, here on the body it gets a little tricky to see now. So I go back to the first layer I've created with my outlines. I use the magic wand again, expand the selection and fill that with black. Since this is the main shape of my character, it basically creates all the rest that I need. So I can now lower the opacity of both this black layer and also the brown one, so that I can see the original shapes of my scribble again, and now it's not a problem to fill the remaining shapes of my white layer. Once that is done, I reset all the opacities back to 100% and basically I'm finished. For a nicer look, I create one more layer just above my background and I fill that with another tone based on the colors of the pen. I double click on my black layer and select the option for contours. As color I choose white and I just increase the value until it looks alright to me. And that's it. Time to save our file, because anything could happen now. For the final version I added some things to the background layer, but in essence you got how I made this thing. Okay, I hope you learned a thing or two. Thanks for watching, and please do not hesitate to comment.